And welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. Well, I'm joined now by the leader of the European People's Party group in the European Parliament, Manfred Weber. Mr. Weber, thank you very much for being with us. Now, the European People's Party is the largest group in the European Parliament. You have 219 seats. That's roughly a third of the total number of seats. You are from Bavaria, Germany. You're described as a close ally of Angela Merkel, and at 42 years old, you're the youngest leader of the EPP group, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to start, obviously, with Greece, because Alexis Tsipras visited Brussels on Wednesday, part of a diplomatic offensive across Europe. He met with the leaders of the EU's 3 institutions, including the European Parliament. Mr. Tsipras sounded very optimistic. He said that a deal is within reach. A solution will be found, he said, with the EU over Greece's debt relief plan. Do you share Mr. Tsipras' optimism?
Well, first of all, it's good to hear this optimism, because in the last week, in the first week of the new government after the elections, we heard a lot of messages from Athens where everybody was simply surprised, and a lot of colleagues were shocked about the statements of the new government, especially the new finance minister. And now we hear a more European approach, in partnership approach, in sitting together and trying to find solution. That is first of all good, but the rules are clear in Europe. First of all, Tsipras has to respect what was already agreed by the Greek government in the previous time.
And that's where I guess you will have a problem with Mr. Tsipras. Your perception, is Mr. Tsipras a man Europe can do business with?
Well, first of all, we have to respect the democratic outcome of the elections in Greece. Tsipras has a majority, together with a coalition partner where I'm not happy with, because right populists are sitting together with left populists. But we have to respect the outcome. That is the situation in Greece. But on the other hand, when we are respecting the outcome, then Tsipras has also to respect what is already agreed with Greece, because the people in Greece voted for a new parliament, for a new government, but they voted not for a new state. You see, Greece did agreements in the past, and we as Europeans, we are asking now the new Greek government to respect the previous agreements. This is a starting point, and before Tsipras is not respecting these previous agreements, we cannot talk about the future.
You say we Europeans, but my feeling is that the Grand Coalition in this parliament is rather divided over Mr. Tsipras. Some members of the Socialist and Democratic group are rather sympathetic to Mr. Tsipras. Am I right when I say that?
That would be for me a big surprise, because the big losers of the whole political development in the past are the Social Democrats. Because, for example, Neo Demokratia, Samaras party in Greece, only lost 2% after such tough measures they did in the last years, cuttings and so on, structural reforms. That was not popular. And he only lost 2%. But PASOK, the Social Democrats, were the big loser in Greece. So we are more or less stable as EPP, and the Social Democrats are the big problem. So I would not understand if the Social Democrats are happy with the victory of Tsipras.
And yet, this victory poses a clear challenge to Germany, to Angela Merkel, because the message from the Greek people is that they have chosen to reject austerity, to reject what is known as the German recipe to the debt crisis. How long can Mrs. Merkel resist the demands of Greece and of other countries?
Well, I don't see that this is a recipe of Angela Merkel. I couldn't see this, because it was unanimously decided amongst the finance minister of the Eurozone. And please imagine, when we are talking about a haircut, what was proposed by Tsipras, then we would talk about 100 million euros from Cyprus, another program country. We're talking about 10 billion euros from Italy they have to pay for the promises of Tsipras. So it's not a German problem. It's a problem of the European Union, especially from the Eurozone. And I'm sure that the European taxpayers will not pay in favor of the promises of Tsipras. Sorry, that is a message which Tsipras has to learn. If he has enough money for the future, if the economy in Greece is growing, if he is creating an atmosphere of stability, that the investors are coming back to Greece, then he can pay higher pensions. But for the moment, he has not the money for this. And if he wants that other taxpayers in Europe should pay for the social benefits in Greece, then he has to talk with the others. And then you cannot refer to a democratic decision. So you feel we are in a very critical time period in the European Union, in the Eurozone, and I'm sure that one principle must be clear, that the agreements who are on the table, which everybody signed unanimously in the Eurozone, has to be respected by everybody.
Now, Germany, Mr. Schäuble, Mrs. Merkel say elections change nothing. There are rules and you must respect the rules. Merkel has ruled out debt cancellation. At the same time, you hear the French government, the French finance minister who says, look, the rules must be applied, but we must find a new contract for Greece. Would you agree with that, that the rules must be respected, but the message coming from the Greek people is very strong and some sort of new deal must be found for Greece?
Frankly speaking, from an EPP point of view, I don't see this. Because what does New Deal mean? More money? What does this mean concretely? When I talk about the
more time to pay back, possibly.
When I'm talking, the Greek has already the best possible conditions for paying back the debt. And sorry, it's the debt of Greece. It's not the debt of Germany or the debt of France or of Italy. We are practicing solidarity with Greece enormously, the taxpayers of Europe. And we are simply asking the Greek politicians and the Greek people to respect the agreements that are on the table. And about the successful way out of the crisis, that is, I think everybody can understand that the people are asking, what is creating hope? What gives us a light at the end of the tunnel? And sorry, I have to refer to the figures. In Spain, we have the situation that after a lot of cuts, we have built 1 million, we have created 1 million new jobs in Spain. We have a stable situation now in Spain compared with Italy, for example. Social Democrats are there in government. Compared with France, Social Democrats and Socialists are in governments there. I don't see any growth perspective for these two member states. So I would say the EPP approach in structural reforms and creating conditions for budgetary discipline, which is showing an investor that you can trust in a country, in the future of the country. That is the only way out. I know it's not a popular message, I know this. But
so
it's
you're
the truth.
telling us essentially
the
that the EPP will remain intransigent, and if Mr. Tsipras wants to apply his program, it will have to leave the Eurozone.
Well, nobody wants that Greece will leave the Eurozone. Nobody wants to do this. And we invested a lot of money and a lot of trust and a lot of partnership approach in this idea that Greece should stay in the Eurozone. But the upcoming days, the development and the responsibility lays in Athens. Because we did whatever we can do, and now it's in the responsibility of Athens to decide about the way of Greece. And sorry, besides the question of the euro, besides the question of the financial discipline, we have other questions on the table. When we see the behavior on the Russian question, that Greece is trying to use the veto as a weapon against the others, sorry, that's unacceptable. That's not a European behavior. So I have to say, the new Greek government, I respect their outcome, but I have to say they have to learn a lot how we behave as Europeans to stand together and to find common approaches.
You referred to Russia there. European sanctions may have weakened the Russian economy, but they certainly haven't weakened Vladimir Putin's determination to destabilize Ukraine. You tell me that there is no military solution, but then what do you do next? Do you want more sanctions against Russia? How do you make sure that Russia stops its aggression over Ukraine?
The only weapon we have is our economic power. So no military solution, but our economic power. And you have to look on this question on the other way around, about what is the background. And I was in Kiev. I was talking with the people who demonstrated 1 year ago in Maidan, where a lot of young people died on Maidan. And what was the idea behind? The idea was behind to live in a society where you can vote in favor of a politician or against a politician, a free democracy, of freedom of speech, the idea of an independent justice system. So principles where we as Europeans say that's normal, but for Ukraine it was not normal. It was an oligarch system. And they tried to fight for principles, for values. And having this in mind, Europe cannot stand beside and can say, oh, I don't see anything. Sorry, when somebody is attacking, such a move, such a development in the questions of values, of European values, then we have to be helpful.
So you're telling us Europe must ratchet up sanctions against Russia?
When Russia is provoking more and more, like they did in the last days, we have a lot of lies on the table. Putin is telling us that the Russian troops are making holidays in Ukraine. Sorry, lies on the table, thousands of lies. If this is going on, then the only possibilities is, first of all, stick to the sanctions, and when they are provoking additional military actions in East Ukraine, when they want to have this frozen conflict, then we have to be ready for activating new sanctions, yes.
Let's talk about the other issue that will be widely discussed at next week's EU summit here in Brussels, Europe's response to the deadly terror attack at Charlie Hebdo in Paris. It prompted a very emotional response from Europe. We all remember these scenes of François Hollande, Angela Merkel, several dozens leaders walking side by side. But beyond the emotions, has Europe done anything to act, to crack down on this real problem? First of all, let me underline that the emotions are important in this context, because to show the terrorists that we are stronger than they are, and we want to define our way of life we have in Europe. We created since decades and centuries and so on. So this is important. I have deep respect for the citizens in France who went out of the street and demonstrated in this impressive way. So this is important. What is Europe now, what is necessary to do on European level? We as EPP, we see two sides of the medal. One side is that we have to give our authorities, our police organization, our intelligence services, better possibilities to use modern data. Data means power, means value in the digital world, you see. And therefore our authorities, our authorities who have the job to defend our life, have to use this data. And you're urging MEPs to adopt the so-called PNR,
exactly.
Passenger Names Record, which so far has been blocked in the European Parliament.
Exactly. I think we need this, but not in a way like the Americans did. I don't want, and we as EPP don't want to have copy and paste about the American approach of fight against terror, because the Americans did a lot of mistakes. I want to have an European way, and that means yes to PNR, yes to data collections, but with strong data protection rules on the European umbrella and the European thinking, you see. And the second most important question, perhaps more important than the data collection, is the cooperation between the authorities. We see a lack of cooperation between the Belgians, the French, the German authorities in this regard. So we have to build up networks that the experts are sitting together and fighting together against the jihadists, because they are connected all over Europe, the jihadists. So we have to strengthen the cooperation on European level. That's an additional very important question.
Now, Manfred Weber, we see the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, obviously. The other side of the coin is rising Islamophobia. The anti-Islam Pegida movement started in your country, Germany, in the city of Dresden. It has spread to other cities and other countries. Last Monday, a few hundred people turned up for the movement's first rally in Vienna. However, a counter-rally in the center of the Austrian capital drew up to 5,000 people. Deeptika Laurent has more. Let's watch her report.
Chanting, "We are the people," Pegida demonstrators faced off against police in the Austrian capital. Just a few hundred people gathered in Vienna, far fewer than the thousands who've been protesting each week in cities across Germany, contesting what they perceive as a growing Islamization in Europe.
The politicians should listen more to the Austrian citizens and not to the large number of immigrants who do not want to live according to the Central European culture, but who want to bring their culture into our country.
At least two demonstrators were seen making Nazi salute-like gestures at the rally, but it was overshadowed by a much larger counter-demonstration drawing some 5,000 anti-Pegida protesters.
I am trying to block this Pegida march because there's no room for right-wing ideologies in Vienna. There is no Islamization problem in Austria. I also want to stand up against right-wing violence.
Around 500,000 Muslims live in Austria. That's about 6% of the population, making it the largest non-Christian religious minority group in the country.
Manfred Weber, what are the roots of this movement?
I think the most important question behind it is that we have to fight and really confront all the demonstrators, all the colleagues who are demonstrating about the question, what are really the values of Europe? What are really the values of Europe? And I, as a Christian Democrat, I, as a politician from the EPP, I can refer to the visit of the Pope in the European Parliament, and he was saying about, I'm remembering you that you, as Europe, you have to practice solidarity with refugees from Syria, for example. That is a Christian value, solidarity with refugees from a civil war. Or remember about the question that one of the big achievements during the history of Europe was that we fought for the freedom of practicing your religion. That is an achievement of Europe. That is a value of Europe. So I want to fight, and I want to identify, I want to discuss with all these colleagues what is really Europe, you see. And when we are coming to an end, when we are really defining what is Europe, then I think we are successful and not these demonstrators.
Manfred Weber, I remind our viewers that you are the leader of the European People's Party group in the European Parliament. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Talking Europe. I was at the European Parliament in Brussels. It's time to go back to Paris now for more news on France 24.